Automation Ladies, the only podcast we know of where girls talk about industrial automation.
Hey, it's another episode of Automation Ladies with Ali G. I don't have an update because my update is normally that I'm trying to sell OT-SCADA tickets, and please come to OT-SCADA. But anyway, before we talk about Sorba AI, I wanted to talk about Brian Thykin himself and, where he came from. I know he's from the Navy, so I wanted to get him to talk about a little bit about how he got from the Navy into industrial controls, because that's an interesting pathway. I've seen that a lot, actually. I've hired in my career, people from the Navy, and they did really well, and they're still doing really well. And so I think that that's actually a really cool avenue of that's something I think Paul Gillespie discovered, which was, let's hire people from the Navy to be in, especially like nuclear subs, but any electronics technicians from the Navy could do really well in industrial controls. And he's the one I think who I've ever first heard that from. And let's talk about that and where you came from, how you got where you are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, my name is Brian Thykin. I'm the head of revenue for Sorba AI. My career kind of started off coming out of the military. I was an electronics technician in the Navy. I did mostly topside work, meaning I worked on radars, satellite communication, terrestrial communication with onboard ships. I joined the Navy after an unsuccessful first year of college when a roommate of mine put in an anonymous little mailer saying I wanted to join and become a Navy SEAL. And I got a call from the recruiter, and looking at my bills and looking at my grades, I decided to jump on my skateboard and go down to the recruiting office and signed up for not a normal 4-year stint, but a 6-year stint in the military, much to my parents' dismay. So after 8 years in the military, 2 deployments and a lot of time out in the middle of the ocean, I got out, was going back to school while working at Siemens, where I started my career as a controls engineer, as they called it, engineering specialist, and worked there while getting my degree, actually with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, with the intention on actually going into academia and getting my PhD in psychology and industrial psychology specifically. Speaking to one of my professors, kind of found out how much they made. And at the same time, I was looking at going into sales after a few years working at Siemens, and ended up choosing the sales route because there was a few more dollars involved. And my buddy promised me too that all I was going to do was drink martinis and play golf. And so I figured, why not? Let's get after it. And turns out that's not the case at all. And so after about 9 years at Siemens, I believe it was, I left and went to a large systems integrator in Maverick Technologies, which I believe you and I were both there at the same time, roughly. And Paul Gillespie is very much a mentor of mine. Learned a ton from him, had a lot of incredible opportunity to, have him coach me. And even to this day, it's always great to get a text from Paul or shoot him a message and ask his opinion on different things. He's in terms of the business of running a systems integration shop and the industry as a whole, he's a very brilliant individual, and a leader in that. After Maverick was acquired by Rockwell Automation, I left for the startup world to kind of go cut my teeth on a few other things. Still really staying in the industrial automation space, and went to a couple of different startups doing different things from, hardware to some software technologies. And then kind of journeyed out of the startup world into a big company at ABB, and then back into the startup world where I ran back into Sorba, who I discovered while I was at one of those startups earlier on.
So let's talk about Sorba and what Sorba is.
Yeah, so Sorba is an end-to-end AI ML platform to enable subject matter experts to build models and deploy them in real time and even perform closed loop control. Everything starts off at the data collection layer. So we have over 65 plus different data connectors. So you can help create that unified namespace. Go into an AutoML piece where you can build AI and ML models, everything from anomaly detection, classification, digital twins, advanced process control models, and forecasting models, all in no code. So you as an SME can build those models out and then deploy them into real time and actually run them in closed loop. And then the models actually retrain on themselves. So the kind of brilliance behind it came from two co-founders. Those two co-founders are both controls engineers, Aldo Ferrante and Yanni Perez. They really wanted to make it where the subject matter experts who knew the processes, knew how the equipment ran, knew the ins and outs of everything, could build models, use on-prem data, not have anything connected to the cloud or have those dependencies, and be able to rapidly iterate and solve problems. And that's what they've built over the last 10, going on 11 years now with the company. They've really driven every feature we release is has to run on-prem first and foremost, be able to run within their OT infrastructure. And it all is about enabling the subject matter experts to really build those models and leverage their expertise without having to know Python or data science or any of those skill sets that are, one, hard to find, but two, also lack the context of the industrial marketplace.
Well, what about hardware? Does Sorba provide the hardware? What do you need for hardware?
So from a hardware perspective, we are just a pure software company. So while many people, I think there's a lot of, I don't know if I want to call them myths, because it'd only be a myth if other companies didn't require it, but we run on a CPU. So our standard install is actually a 32 gig, 8 core, 500 gig hard drive machine. So you can run on pretty much your standard desktop. You can put that, run an AI deep learning model in said hardware, run it all on-prem, retrain it on-prem, do everything on-prem. And that's usually provided by our systems integrator partners, by the end users themselves. We just provide our software, very much following in the inductive automation manner, where we have a free 2-hour license. You can install it and play around with the tools and see what you can build. And then when you're ready, go and put a full license in and build away.
So what can you say to other controls engineers about AI?
So I have been in the AI space for, I say, about 6 years now, maybe 7. First, most companies require the cloud to do AI. And I think that is kind of antithetical to a lot of industrial automation stuff in general. I mean, when you make cookies or make oil or make beer or whatever your product is, the values in the recipes, the values in all that information there, how you make it and that information, and having that information up on the cloud, you're immediately exposed. I think, AI, because you start becoming cloud dependent, is the first downside to a lot of the applications. The second piece around AI is it's really heavy on having so many other resources involved who don't necessarily know the plant. And having worked in other tech companies, you have AI, data scientists who are brilliant and know a ton of stuff, but they've never been in a plant. They've never seen a PLC cabinet. They've never opened that up and seen the rat's nest. And again, I've seen photos from your LinkedIn, all sorts of people who are out there to show these just, the dirt, the grime, the dust, being out there. They don't understand, that you're running on a slick that, has been in there for 20 plus years, running just fine. They have very much an IT focus on things. And so it's really hard to marry the two things. I actually, there's that saying, the IT-OT convergence. And I actually very much disagree with that statement. I think OT realized IT has some cool tools and they grabbed them, but the IT people really don't fully understand the complexity, the challenges that occur when you're trying to make something. And, a lot of these companies also, AI comes in as this salvation to, making things better, when the reality is none of these businesses would be around if they weren't making products profitably. AI, in my opinion, is something you're helping to augment a workforce that is struggling to get people into it in general. I remember a stat, and I'm sure the stat is definitely out of date from when I was told it by Paul as part of our sales pitch when we were at Maverick, the average age of an industrial automation engineer was 55. That was, I don't know how long ago it was, I was at Maverick, but I mean,
10 years
that
ago.
is, yeah, that was, I doubt it's gotten better. And so you're using tools like Sorba to help, you're using AI to help augment the workforce. It's definitely not going to replace it. Right now, there's not enough people even to fill in the gaps that are currently there. So to me, when I look at companies that go out there and kind of laud all this incredible savings that AI has brought, first off, these companies are probably doing a pretty exceptional job with the tools they have, and they're making profits. What you're trying to do is, I feel like AI is about creating consistency in a product. PID is going to have swings. It's a reactive thing, whereas machine learning and AI can be a predictive thing. It's going to say, hey, I know when these conditions are met, I need to be at this set point. So rather than a PID hunting for it, I'm just going to go to it. And I think that that's kind of when I talk to people about what AI can do, it's about creating that consistent behavior in your machines, predicting what it can be. So you, instead of having a little bit of swing and having potential loss on that swing, you're just staying at a nice steady yield because, you can only put, 10 gallons of water through a certain size pipe, or you can use whatever colloquialism you want there. All you're trying to do is make sure you're consistently sending that through. And that's where AI and machine learning help. And it also then takes out, it can augment the operator there by doing a closed loop control and ensuring that is staying at that rather than having an operator, shift to shift, have differences, how they run a machine, et cetera. So very long-winded way of saying, I look at AI as much more as an augmentation in the industrial space of really supporting the controls engineers, the process engineers in a plant where they're already overtaxed with too much work and trying to keep a plant up and profitable.
And very similar question. What do you have to say to manufacturers who don't want to use AI?
I honestly think that there is, one of the biggest challenges I think that holds people back is you go into a project, they've heard these stories. They're like, maybe they're curious about AI, but usually the objections are, well, I got to put my data in the cloud. That's a risk, or the projects take a long time, and I don't know if we get to value. I personally, again, if you're profitable and making products and you have your staffing great, I think it's important just to stay, find the way that makes you feel most comfortable. There are technologies out there, though, that can help meet those different pain points and help you get to value quickly. One of the things that I think is very unique about what we do is the data science process is very long. So let's say you want to optimize a boiler and you want to use machine learning for that. You have to do a bunch of data ops. It could take days and weeks to go through your data. Then you go into the model building itself and you're going through and sequentially picking, what algorithm you want to use and testing out for the best fit. Then you deploy that model and you put it out in production, and that takes time. And then you find out it didn't actually solve problems. You go back to this 3-6 month process and you spent money and, more importantly, time, which you don't have. And that becomes very scary for people to get engaged in that process. And what we've done, and I was over visiting with one of our customers overseas a few weeks back, we sat in a room and with our software, we were able to iterate within minutes on, the different things. So we were able to test out an algorithm and a model that we want to put in production, say a fill line. And we are able to go, okay, that one didn't work, build a new one. And in a matter of minutes, not days, weeks, months, get to kind of value. I think that when people say, I don't want to do AI, I think it's a lot of, one, they see ChatGPT and my data's going out here, it's going to be all in the exposed. They see the time. There's just a lot of those things which they don't have. I think technologies are coming out. I know, obviously with Sorba, I know there's technologies out that can solve that and help that process be a lot less painful and scary, to be honest. And again, we're reusing, in some cases, a lot of techniques that have been around for a long time. I mean, I feel like AI is also a little bit of a rebrand of looking at old techniques, but just with new IT technologies, we're able to kind of absorb over from that side of the house and use in the OT environment.
What advice do you have for young people that are trying to get into AI and machine learning? What should they be teaching themselves?
So I have a bunch of friends who are data scientists. And to be honest, like you want to talk about something that AI is going to get rid of is data science. I mean, it's
So don't be a data scientist.
it's my hot take right there. Love it or hate it, that's my hot take. I'll, hate mail, please send it
No,
to
you need to tell the truth.
yeah.
That's the truth. Like, then that's the truth. So it's okay.
Well, I truly believe, I've been in the industry for almost 25 years now. If you count in my military time as well, a little more than that, actually, if you count that in. I think really when you get to the core of it, and some other people who are out there that I think are brilliant in this space, Rick Bellotta, who is the co-founder of PTC. He talks about it all the time, and I always forget the guy's name from Dirty Jobs. Like, the core work at the end of the day that you need to know, those fundamentals of how a process works, will never be replaced, in my opinion. Again, hot take if you want, will ever be replaced by AI. It can tell you how a process might theoretically work, but you physically going out and troubleshooting with a multimeter in a panel, understanding how that relay logic is working with something else. I would tell every junior engineer, I tell my kids, know the fundamentals of everything you're doing, because at the end of the day, things like ChatGPT are wonderful, but they're also a crutch. You don't learn your basics, you need to know arithmetic before you move to algebra type of thing. Focus on that and don't take the shortcut around the kind of core learnings you need to have, because at the end of the day, how that electron flows from the power source into that relay to then turn on a pump to do all that stuff is always going to be part of it. Even when our robot overlords come to take us over, they still have synchros and servos that are working from all those core principles. So learn those core principles, because I feel the software defined stuff, as we're doing with Sorba, like data science is automated. It's math. Computers are great at math. That is a piece that's going to go away. You're going to have tools that are going to help you with that, but you're never going to have tools come along that are going to help you understand, when that relay logic doesn't make sense anymore, and you've got to go in there physically and start playing around with things to get that machine or line that, makes popsicles or beer or oil or whatever back up and running. So that's what I tell a lot of people is, like, stay with the fundamentals, learn all the dirty parts of the job. That hands-on piece is super important. And I unfortunately, I see a lot of younger engineers who I don't feel that they've become very software centric in everything they do. And because of that, I think we'll see the cascading effect 10 years from now, probably, or longer, where there's going to be a big gap of knowledge from the guy who, could, theoretically put his hand on, the motor and tell you what's wrong with it. That whole adage, you pay me for my 30 years of experience, not for the 15 years it took me, or 15 minutes it took to fix it. I think there's going to be a frightening gap that occurs because of the software-defined world that everybody's growing up with right now. That physical world, the actual knowledge of how the things work is going to start to evaporate. It's all going to be very dependent on what a prompt tells you.
Right on. My question is, in AI, what are the skills that keep people from losing their AI job?
Ooh, the skills that keep you from losing your job to AI?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So it goes back to that kind of core understanding of a process. So, a lot of customers will ask us specifically, like, will you build the models for us? And our response is the same, we'll help you. We'll teach you to fish. We're not going to fish for you. And the reason is, it's like, you can go into 20 different cookie making plants, or we'll use something that's even more like just, generic. making beer is about the most, you can go to every brewery and they're all going to have the same processes, right? Every brewery is going to look nearly exactly the same. And in fact, the IO count in almost every brewery outside of packaging lines and stuff are nearly the same from a beginning to end. But yet how, an operator runs that, et cetera, understands the process, understands where, this flow meter, how it interacts with some other process or their specific recipes. That to me is how you stay relevant, is understanding truly the physical aspects of that. Because while you can ask, an AI agent or anything to tell me how something works, it's not the same plant to plant. Even just in the most traditional automation way, you can have two exact same refineries built side by side on literally the same acreage. They're both going to behave a little bit different because, a pipe was plumbed just slightly different. A pump was replaced and replaced with a different, brand of pump that maybe has a different power curve. Like nothing, that knowledge you have on the operations of it is something that AI can't take in. Now, yes, you can build optimization models. You can use tools like ours to help augment that operational piece, but it's still never going to take away, you, Ali G, going in there and knowing exactly on Tuesdays when Steve is operating this piece of equipment at 4 p.m. when he likes to go, get another cup of coffee, that this is going to happen. I mean, those are behaviors in a plant that unfortunately, AI looks at macro. These become micro details that help you keep things up and operational. And ultimately, yes, you can feed them into AI models and you'll keep learning and be a little bit better, but it's never going to replace people in that manner. Again, another hot take. I feel like I even have internally to our team, we'll be like, no, AI will do that in the future. I'm like, no, I don't think so. So just my personal, I just saw a video of some lawyers who got just dressed down in court because they obviously used some GPT to build their briefs, and the judges were like, this isn't even real case law. It's made up. The chat engine made it up. And so I feel like that's why we'll always be in the loop. There's that expertise, especially in making stuff. It's just such a tangible thing. They've been pulling grease out of the ground in the oil and gas industry for 100 plus years. At this point, you're still using, you're down in Houston now, right? Have you gone down to the Natural History Museum there? Yes. And seen the fourth floor? It's the most rudimentary stuff. And they're like, AI is going to, they've been pulling grease out of the ground for a long time. It's a plunger. It's literally the most basic physics stuff. And they're still using that same technology forever. So that's why I don't worry too much about the robot overlords.
Okay, how about digital twins? Can you tell me what's a real digital twin versus a bullshit one? Because there are BS ones.
Yes, I agree with you. I think maybe there are a lot of BS ones. I think also too the definition is so broad that
I think that's the real it.
Well, no, it's both. But I think it's real. So there's I think some people look at a digital twin as I have this replication of my plant that I can visually see, and I'll have indicators on it. A good buddy of mine at a different company called Antea, they have this beautiful digital twin that they build for reliability modeling. And Floyd Baker and his team have this incredible, it's beautiful. But I look at that from my perspective, and you're trying to do real-time automation and trying to, what if scenarios, et cetera. That's kind of the other side of the coin of digital twins. I'm looking at time series data. I just need a chart. I need to know if I drop the speed down on this or I add, X amount more of this chemical into this process. What is my outcome going to be? And am I going to get more yield? Yes, yield, and kind of see that prediction or interaction between it in just a time series data, not, visual representation of your plant. So for Sorba, the digital twin piece is really around that second part. It's how do we take the data we have now, live data from our historian, or live data or from our historian, build out a model that replicates the current operation of what we consider like to be most performant, and then let's turn the dial down on this and see what happens. Or we want to test out what we have a 15 horse motor in there now. What does 20 horse get us? How does that change the behavior going through? To me, there's practical application for both. If you're an operator, maybe the visualization piece is better, but from a process engineering and optimization standpoint, the time series data that what if scenario piece on digital twins is far more valuable, because at the end of the day, the operator just needs to know, like, hey, digital twin is telling me, or the APC or the anomaly detection is telling me blank. How do I need to respond appropriately so we increase yield, reduce scrap, whatever your KPI is that you want to make sure that data is informing to your operator on the line.
Do you have any surprise information? Tell us about you again.
About me again? Well, I surprise information. There's so many things. Yeah. I mean, but before earlier, I think back when I joined the Navy, it was much to my parents' chagrin, my roommate, him and I would sit around watching Jerry Springer, and I was doing very poorly at school. That's always a good little nugget of fun. I think, a lot of a lot of the, things that I think about when it comes to like the future of all this is, one, we need to get more people into this industry just as a whole. I know this is really surprise type stuff, but this is just more, the what keeps me up at night. I think there's a lot of fear mongering around stuff. And I also think that people need to get back into the dirtier jobs. Remember his name, Mike Rowe, there is a truly aspect. I mean, I told my two older kids, and I've told my youngest one as well. There's a little age gap in them, but go into the trades. I mean, it's the one thing I remember when I got out of the military and I went to work for Siemens. I remember sitting there. I worked with a lot of electricians and pipe fitters all the time. I mean, I was like side by side with them and have lunch with them every day. And I mean, one, I was shocked. I had no idea. My dad would never, ever. My dad was an accountant and a CFO and that type of stuff. And never in a million years would he suggest going into the trades. And I've told all of my kids, go into the trades. Like, it is just so needed. And you learn so much and they make great money. So go be an electrician, go be a pipe fitter, go do that stuff. Because even if later on down the road you want to get into software, you want to get into being a controls engineer, you want to do that, you really have, I think, far more core skills around it. So, yeah, totally didn't answer your question there, but that's kind of like, my hot take. I just look around the industry right now, and too many people are kind of going into the soft world of software, and this, like, I want to be in an air conditioned office and have a ping pong table and snacks. And the reality is we need more people out there willing to get dirty, going out there and troubleshooting panels and getting all those PLC files out of there, or old Siemens gear and stuff, and getting getting that infrastructure built out so that we can continue forward in this space, and that AI becomes applicable there.
So I'm a millennial, and I grew up being told that if you don't go to college, you're wasting basically your abilities. And I know that that's what all of my classmates were told, because that's why we have the giant skills gap that we have today. Do you think we're finally getting over that? Or do you see any movement in it's okay? I mean, obviously you as a dad are doing it, which is really awesome. But outside of you as a dad, like, are people coming to terms with the fact that we do need the trades, and that we need to stop saying that the trades is not good enough for you? I mean, that's what they were saying. They were basically saying, if you have good grades, you're too good for the trades. And I think that's insane. What do you think?
100% agree. I think, well, so I don't know if there's a shift happening. So I'm a Gen Xer. I college was just kind of, my parents' college was not even an option. And of course, I joined the military and they weren't happy about that. So to me, I think one, college has gotten really skewed towards almost hyper-specific behavior or hyper-specific training, almost as a trade in and of itself. There is actually this really interesting company, travel a ton. I travel a ton. You're on flights. You have conversations with random people that you're sitting next to in chairs. Flying back home, and this guy and I were having a conversation, and he made this comment about like how most entrepreneurs or CEOs have actually liberal arts degrees. History and like soft skills or soft sciences. Like psychology, sociology, etc. And that level of critical thinking that you learn in a liberal arts degree is being lost in all of these like hyper focused, like even in computer science and even in engineering, where you don't develop a lot of the other skills that are required to be in a professional setting. And like they have this whole thesis around a business where if you go to like major engineering firms and you ask them like, how do you hire a project manager, which requires both soft skills and technical skills, how do you we go to Purdue and we find somebody with a 4.0. And you're like, cool. Like I know a lot of people with 4.0s from Purdue who can barely hold a conversation, let alone eye contact. How is that applicable to a project management role? And so I think one, college has been distorted in a way where now people are getting almost too specific, almost like a trade degree in a way. They're losing a lot of that general critical thinking that goes on in a university to, just think outside of, 1+1=2, but just really like, here's history, here's how we're extrapolating things and ideas and thoughts and even just writing a paper. So that's one part I think is, different about college now, that I don't know if people see some of the value going, but I don't know if trades have really been a replacement for that. I don't see it rapidly changing. I need to go catch up with a few of my buddies in the trades here, and kind of find out if they've seen more or less people come in. But I do know this. I was going after data centers about, that was before it became even more crazy. And there was deals where like electrical teams, they bid on a data center hall, and you'd have to get a quote from these electrical contractors that were absurd, and bonuses every day, higher per diem rates, 30 hours and then overtime. And these crews would swap because somebody else would just come in and there was so few electricians to win another deal. You just sweeten the deal and this whole crew would just shift because that's how it worked. There was just not enough people. And they were coming, there'd be a project in Des Moines and you'd have people coming in from California and Chicago because there just wasn't enough electricians to handle a $2 billion data center being built. So I'm going to go on a limb. I don't know the data, but I'm going to go on a limb. No, it hasn't changed. It doesn't seem to be rapid enough to get more people in the pipeline. And I know I saw an ad the other day of IBEW, like basically begging people to come and apply. And electricians make good money. If you haven't looked,
yeah,
after you get your apprenticeship, you're making like 45 on the check and you have benefits and all this. It's crazy. Like, not to sound like I'm, pumping going into the trades, too hard, but it is a great gig. I mean, there are some days I think about it. Like I put conduit in my own house just for fun because I saw my buddies doing it. And I was like, I could bend pipe. This is fun. So, it's, I think the trades are woefully underserved. And I don't think there's a lot of promotion, honestly, from the states and the federal government to really get people going that direction. I think that there needs to be more involvement there. And even, I think it was the CEO of Ford was even talking about how they need to push more and more people into the trades because they're struggling to find people to help manufacture vehicles in the U.S. So I think there needs to be a bigger concerted effort around that.
If you're in the trades, what advice do you give them?
If they're in the trades right now, like what would you give them, or if they want to go there?
Yeah, they're already in the trades.
Oh, I mean, I had a buddy who, unfortunately, I worked with at one of the startups who unfortunately passed away.
I'm sorry.
I mean, just Be an entrepreneur. I mean, go after it. I mean, this guy, first off, he was
I agree with
one of the
that.
kindest souls. Yeah, he was one of the kindest souls I've ever met in my entire life. He was just so generous with his time. But he was a pipe fitter, no college education, started his own pipe fitting company, sold the thing, I think, to MCOR for like $25 million. Like, just go do it. Like, you have a skill that is all like, you write Python, you can see that your job is at risk. I think I'm going to misquote. I'm going to misquote Rick here, but if you work in bits and bytes, you should be in trouble. But if you move electrons, you're probably fine.
Aw.
If you know how to run wire from point A to point B, you're going to have a job for as long as I'm going to be alive, at least, and probably as long as my kids are going to be alive. But if you're so go be an entrepreneur, go start your own company, go get other people into that field. There's plenty of money to be made there. You will never be without a job. It is a place where I think that you can thrive. And I mean, as a person who works way too many hours, there are days that I wish that somebody told me it was time to punch the clock and go home and pull out a fishing pole because you had nothing else to do because your shift ended and they could do stuff. I mean, I remember the day I was an engineer at Siemens. I was a PM actually at the time. And my buddy told me he just turned out as a journeyman and he told me how much he made. I was like, you work like 20 hours less a week than I do and you make more money than me. This is ridiculous. So I highly recommend doing it. If I told 18-year-old me, I'd probably do that than join the military, although the military was a blast in its own way. So
That's great. If people want to find you, where can they find you? Can they find you on LinkedIn?
Yep. Go to LinkedIn. I'm on there. Brian with the Y, Thyken, Thyken. Or, go to Sorba AI and, hit the contact us button and it'll hit me or one of my salespeople. Or, shoot me an email at bthyken@sorba.ai. And love to chat about all these things and whatever else.
That's great. Thank you very much for being a guest today. And we've had a really good episode. I really like this episode, actually.
Well, good. I'm super excited to be down at OT SCADACon. It's my first time going. I am super stoked. I'm pulling together all my slides right now to talk about predictive maintenance and how you can solve a lot of very interesting problems right now. And of course, how it's SME focused. So yeah, I hope to see people there. I will be there speaking, hopefully eloquently and with some information that is valuable to the people. But super excited about that. I was actually just booking my hotel rooms for that trip, making sure I had everything dialed in for being down there.
That's great. Yeah, I remember trying to learn about predictive maintenance myself. And I remember we had a downed chiller. And it was really easy to tell that the chiller was down, but we just had to have that data. But it was data that wasn't impossible to get. I remember that being like a really important part of my career where I could see really obviously that there was some data that just we needed to know, otherwise we were going to lose production. And I thought, wow, is it really why is there nothing else built for this? Because there wasn't. It was just me saying, okay, if the temperature goes this low for this long, that means we lost our heating to our pumps and or whatever it was that we were losing. And, nobody cared, but everybody cared about the outcome. So I'm excited to see kind of what happens with, Sorba and what happens with all of the AIs that are happening right now, because, it's changing the world, I think.
You're spot on. And I think the most important part about it too, though, is there's so much data out there right now. There's so much data. I mean, insane amount of data. I was actually told MQTT, one of the biggest users of MQTT data is actually Facebook. So you think about that, in terms of
really?
Yeah. So I didn't know that, and somebody please fact check me on that. But I remember somebody telling me, and I was like, wait, why? For their messaging, because it's a very efficient protocol, right? So there's just bajillions and bajillions of bits of data floating around out there. But to your point about like solving a chiller maintenance issue, you still need to know, you as an expert on that chiller, how it's configured. Is it a duplex, triplex pump? Is, you using a cooling tower, using how that whole thing is configured determines how it fails and how you create context and how you predict whether a failure is going to happen. So I think how you build AI models out and how you leverage your knowledge is the key piece. That's one of the biggest parts of what I'm going to talk about is there's no such thing as one size fits all model. And when companies sell you that idea of like, we have these bajillion pre-trained models, it's not how your plant runs. That's just how a motor or multiple motors that were used to train that data run. And I think that there's a very important piece to know that like you as the SME inside that plant have a very specific knowledge set that needs to be embedded into those predictive maintenance models to truly be effective at creating that value.
I completely agree. Well, thank you very much for being on this episode today.
No, thank you. I super appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Thank you for listening to Automation Ladies. If you like our content and you want to stay in touch, please connect with us on LinkedIn, follow the show page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can send us a message or a coffee on our website, automationladies.io. We look forward to getting to know you. Our producer is Veronica Espinoza, and our music is composed by Samuel James.